It was quiet. That kind of quiet that makes you stop in the doorway and take a breath, not because you're tired, but because for once everything feels still. I stood there, keys in hand, inside my very first home. Mine. After years of saving, scrimping, working 2 jobs, skipping vacations and Christmases, I finally had something that was mine. I ran my hand along the edge of the kitchen counter. Still smelled like paint. The walls were bare, boxes still taped shut, but I could already see it, me sitting at that little table by the window, sipping coffee with nobody yelling over the morning news. No guilt trips. No emotional blackmail wrapped in forced hugs. Just peace. Growing up, I was the afterthought, the youngest daughter in a house that never had room for my voice. It was always, listen to your sister, or worse, you'll never make it without her help. I carried those words like a stain I couldn't scrub off. Now, standing there alone, in my own home, I whispered it to myself, you made it. And for a fleeting moment, I believed I had. But peace doesn't last long in my family. The phone rang that afternoon, Mom. Her voice was all sugar, the kind that coats your teeth before it turns bitter. Sweetheart, Beverly told us the good news. We're all so proud. She said you closed on the house? I smiled cautiously. Yeah, I did. Well, she laughed lightly, I hope you didn't forget the guest room for your sister. My grip on the phone tightened. Guest room? Oh, don't play dumb, she said, in that sing-song tone. You bought it for her, right? I mean, it's only fair, she's older, and you know she's been looking for a place. I went quiet. Wait, what do you mean it's Beverly's? I finally asked, every muscle in my body turning rigid. Oh honey, she chuckled, like I was a child confusing her ABCs. You didn't think you'd live there alone, did you? Beverly needs stability, and this could be a great start for her. That was the moment it hit me. They never thought I could do this on my own. They assumed, expected, decided, it was Beverly's. I cleared my throat. No, Mom. This house is mine. I bought it for myself. I'm living here. Alone. The silence that followed was icy. Well, she snapped eventually, don't be selfish. Selfish. The word echoed, thudded in my chest. 2 days later, there was a family barbecue. Beverly invited me herself. Let's celebrate, she said, voice light, almost kind. I should have known better. It was at Uncle Rick's place, everyone was there. As I walked in, people clapped. Not for me, for her. There she is! Aunt Marla called. Our new homeowner. Beverly smiled, arms open like she was on a stage. I still can't believe it. I mean, it's all happening so fast. I stood still, frozen in place. Then came the intervention. One by one, they closed in. You didn't even think of her, did you? Uncle Rick said, waving a beer can. That house could have set her up right. You've always been jealous, Aunt Clara added. Beverly's done more for this family than you ever have, said my mother, lips curled in that familiar smirk. Then Beverly. You really think you deserve to live alone while I'm stuck in that dump? I thought you loved me. And then, Dad. He slammed his fist on the table, hard. The plates jumped. You bought that house behind our backs. After all we did for you? Nobody said a word about my sacrifice. My years of saving, struggling, earning. Just betrayal. Accusation. Entitlement. I didn't say anything. I didn't yell. I just walked out. Not because I was weak. Because I refused to be baited into begging for the life I built myself. But as I drove back home, windows down, I felt a storm inside. Was I really selfish? Was I the problem? I remembered being 10, wanting to take piano lessons. Beverly threw a tantrum. So they told me, be the strong one. Let her have it. Be strong. That's what they always told me. Which meant, don't ask, don't need, don't want. I didn't cry that night. Not in front of them. But when I got home and shut the door behind me, the silence didn't comfort me this time. It roared. I looked around the house again, my house. Boxes still sealed, phone buzzing with texts I refused to check. I set it down. Took a breath. Stood in the kitchen and said to myself, maybe to God, maybe to nobody. I bought myself a home, and in doing that, I accidentally declared war on my own blood. The house was still. Not peaceful, just silent. That kind of silence that doesn't calm you. It sits on your shoulders, heavy. I woke up with a dry mouth, the smell of cardboard still lingering in the air. Half-opened boxes surrounded me like tired soldiers after a lost battle. Sunlight came in through the blinds, cutting across the room in sharp lines, but even the light felt cold. I sat up on the couch. I hadn't even made it to bed the night before. My cheek throbbed, not from a slap, not yet. But Dad's grip had left a dull bruise, right below my eye. I touched it gently, more out of disbelief than pain. This was supposed to be the beginning of something new. A fresh chapter. And somehow, in less than 48 hours, they had dragged all their old dust into it. Family can be your first wound and your last excuse. I don't know where I first heard that. Maybe a therapist's office. Or maybe it just came to me over time, after enough birthdays spent on the sidelines. It echoed now. I picked up my phone. 20 missed calls. All them. I didn't answer a single one. But I listened to the voicemail. I wish I hadn't. Hi honey, Mom's voice was soft, almost sugary. Your father didn't mean to raise his voice, it's just, well, you've really embarrassed us all. In the background, Beverly screamed, she's a traitor, Mom. She's always been jealous of me. And then Dad. Cold. Measured. If she's not part of this family, she'll regret it. I froze. I didn't breathe. I just held the phone in my hand like it had turned into a weapon. Regret it? I played the message again. Slower. The entitlement dripped through every syllable. They weren't hurt, they felt owed. My effort, my money, my home. They thought it belonged to them. I stood, suddenly aware of how real this was becoming. This wasn't just about a fight. This wasn't some dramatic misunderstanding. This was war, and they thought they had the upper hand. My fingers trembled. I walked to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time in a long time, I saw something different. There was no shame left in my face. Just clarity. They've been writing this script for years. Beverly crashes her car in high school. I pay half the repairs, because that's what family does. Christmas morning, she opens twice the gifts. I get socks and a nod. I was trained to serve, to sit small, to make space. But I wasn't that girl anymore. The knock at the door hit like a gavel, loud and final. Once. Then twice. Then again. I didn't answer right away. I stared at the doorknob like it might bite me. But I opened it. Mom, Dad, Beverly. They stood like a committee, papers in hand, fake smiles. We thought we'd help you sort the deed, Mom began, stepping forward like she owned the floor. It's a lot of responsibility, and we figured Beverly should be included, just in case. Included? I repeated. Dad didn't blink. You don't know what you're doing. You're overwhelmed. This is for your protection. They laid the documents on my kitchen counter like they were blessing me. Or preparing a sacrifice. Just sign here, Mom said, handing me a pen. I didn't move. No, I said. Calm. Even. Dad's jaw clenched. Don't make this difficult. I said no. He stepped closer. Too close. His hand twitched. Raised. And God help me, I didn't flinch. I stepped back and said it clearly, without shaking, if you touch me, I'll call the police. Something shifted then. It was like the floor gave way, but only beneath their feet. They didn't yell. They didn't threaten. They turned. Quiet. Cold. Left the papers on the counter like broken promises. When the door slammed, I locked it. My hand shook as the bolt slid into place. I stood there, forehead against the wood, trying to find my breath. They'd crossed the line. I sank to the floor, knees pulled tight to my chest. I didn't cry. But I felt it. The end of something. The beginning of something else. Alone, yes. But free. They wanted obedience. What they'll get is distance. Saturday morning started like any other. The sun was out, the air smelled like freshly cut grass, and the quiet hum of lawnmowers filled the background. My new neighborhood had this charm, people waved when you passed, porch flags fluttered just enough to seem friendly, not political. I threw on an old hoodie, tied my hair up, and decided to treat myself to a coffee. A small act of normalcy. I walked into the local cafe, the one I'd been going to since closing on the house. Same girl behind the counter, same chalkboard menu, same stool I always sat on while I waited for my drink. But today, something was off. People looked away too fast. A couple at the window seat stared, then whispered. One woman I'd spoken to before, a retired teacher, turned her back completely. I stood there, holding my wallet, unsure if I was imagining it all. Maybe I looked too tired. Maybe they could sense the chaos hanging off me like fog. The waitress, Jenna, called my name softly. When she handed me the cup, her voice dropped to a whisper. I'm sorry. That's when I checked my phone. Notifications. Dozens of them. My stomach sank. Beverly had posted. It wasn't just any post, it was a long, syrupy tale written like a eulogy. My heart is broken, it began. My sister, the one I grew up sharing secrets and dreams with, has turned her back on the family that raised her. She had tagged everyone. Mom. Dad. Aunt Louise. The family friends we used to visit every Thanksgiving. My old Sunday school teacher. My high school principal. She bought a house, Beverly continued, but not to build a future with us, but to escape us. To isolate herself. She left our aging parents behind. She cut us off. And for what? Pride? A sense of superiority? Then came the photo. A childhood picture. Me and Beverly, arms around each other, both in matching 4th of July t-shirts. It had been taken right after she'd gotten out of grounding for stealing from our neighbor. I remembered because I had to apologize for her. The caption? Sometimes, the people you trust the most hurt you the deepest. The comments were a firestorm. She's always been the cold one. Your parents deserve better. If it weren't for Beverly, that girl would be lost. And the worst part? My parents both commented. Mom wrote, "We raised her better than this." Dad just left a thumbs up. I sat in my car outside the cafe for what felt like hours. The coffee went cold. I didn't move. Just scrolled and read and scrolled again. They had dragged it all into the open. Not a misunderstanding. Not a family disagreement. This was theater. Public, staged, with me as the villain. The memories hit me like a second wind. Like when I got the scholarship to a university out of state and they told me I was too proud for choosing to leave. Or when Beverly couldn't pay rent after college and they expected me to cover her half. When I said no, Dad threatened to cut me off, as if I owed them my adulthood. It was always about control. And now they had a new tool, shame, broadcast live on every phone in town. I thought of that quote I read once, Eleanor Roosevelt. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. I hadn't understood it then. I did now. This wasn't shame I had to carry. This was projection. Their fear, their entitlement, their anger. Not mine. I decided to get groceries. Just to reclaim some piece of normal. But the cashier, Tim, who'd once told me about his daughter's wedding, wouldn't look me in the eye. At the gas station, a woman I barely knew asked, "Did you really hit your dad?" My mouth opened, but nothing came out. I didn't know that was the rumor now. By the time I got home, there was a voicemail from my boss. "Hey, just a heads up, someone sent an email to HR about you. Said you're going through some concerning behavior. Let me know if we should talk." That was it. I dropped the bags on the floor, didn't even unpack the milk. I sat down, opened my laptop, and made a folder. Truth. Inside, I started dropping screenshots. Every post. Every comment. Every voicemail I'd saved. The public ones, the subtle ones, the veiled threats. I took my time, not out of spite, but clarity. This wasn't going to disappear. And I wasn't going to let them rewrite who I was to fit their story. I called Laura, a friend from college who practiced family law now. Left a message. "Hey, I might need some advice. Not sure yet. Just call me when you can." I leaned back in my chair. Breathed deep. They wanted public? I'd give them truth. But on my terms. I arrived that evening at my parents' home in Spokane with the weight of 1,000 good intentions, and the uneasy feeling that none of them mattered. The dining room had been set up with the same old portraits, Mom and Dad in Sunday best, Beverly with her fancy shoes, me tucked away in the corner. I walked in and greeted them with a steady hello, though inside my stomach churned. My chair had been pulled back, near the door to the bathroom, away from the main table. I recognized it instantly, this wasn't an accident. It felt like every birthday, every holiday, every family meeting when I was asked to sit over there, hidden away so the prettier, louder sister looked better. Tonight, it wasn't a memory, it was still happening. The waiter came and placed a plain wooden seat beside the buffet line, while everyone else sat on tall, cushioned chairs at the head table. I nodded, said thanks, tried to ignore how the air felt colder around me. Mom made small talk. "We're so proud of your house," she said, barely sounding sincere. Dad asked about work, asked if I was happy. I answered yes. Inside, I thought, you're proud of what I bought, but not of who I am. My cheeks burned, and I swallowed a gulp of awkward relief. As Dad raised his glass for the toast, I looked at the framed guest list on the wall. My name was there, sure, but under support staff, not owners. I caught a cousin's smirk and hear him whisper, "Guess you're helping out, huh?" Mom clinked her glass, but her eyes flicked to Alicia, the one being celebrated. I forced a laugh. Thank you for including me. It tasted like ash. I recalled exactly the first time I sat in a chair near the bathroom as a teenager, being told it was closer to home, as if home wasn't worth leaving. There was shame in that memory. And rage. At dessert, Mom stood and said, "Special thanks to Alicia for the redesign of the house." My cake hit my throat. I'd done the layout. I'd signed permits. I'd been the one who made the late-night calls and read the fine print. But now they gave it to her. On stage. In front of them all. I caught Rowena's eye across the room. Our silent exchange was a lifeline. She'd saved the original contract bearing my name. But that was behind the scenes, while this moment was public. Alicia's grin shone. Mom's proud nod. Dad's stiff posture. Everyone watching. I stood up, quietly. No shouting. Just a move toward the back door, heart pounding. Reflection in the patio glass caught their expressions, triumph, calm, entitlement. I came back inside, raised my own glass. "Mom, Dad," I said, voice clear. The room went still. I appreciate your gratitude. But I cannot sit in a seat marked helping when I led the project. I watched their faces tighten. The waiter set down the wrong wine. Alicia raised her glass to applause that wasn't mine. I held my voice steady. "I'll delay dessert tonight. I'll be back when the paperwork reflects my name." I could feel Dad's jaw shift. Beverly's eyes dropped. Mom's smile vanished. It was over. A statement. A boundary. I left through the door they'd set for me, toward the street where snow began to fall. Spokane night air was sharp but clean. I inhaled. Let the cold cut through the shame. This time, I was walking away, not in defeat, but with purpose. The days after that dinner felt like walking underwater. No one spoke. No text from Mom, no calls from Dad, not even a hint of contact from Beverly. The house, mine, echoed with empty rooms, unpacked boxes, and the faint hum of heaters trying to keep up. At work I sat at my desk, looked busy, but my manager kept giving me that sideways glance. It was silence, but heavier than any argument I'd ever had. I thought silence would heal things. For years it did. Hold your tongue, do your job, smile at family dinners, and maybe they'll treat you better. It never worked. This time I realized it wasn't peace, it was surrender. Each unanswered message, each blank reply felt like a ledger keeping score. I kept busy, went for walks in the cold Spokane air, journaled in the kitchen light after dinner, tried to fill the quiet with something meaningful. But the quiet kept turning in on me. I kept saying under my breath, silence isn't noble when it protects abuse. And I began to mean it. Then a letter arrived. Plain, official looking, just the lawyer's name and address. My hands trembled when I picked it up. The envelope said it was from a family friend who happened to be a lawyer. Inside, claims I was emotionally unstable, a nod to the Facebook posts, the rumors. Told I might not be fit to handle my own home. If I didn't step aside, they said, they would seek legal conservatorship. My heart panicked. I realized then this was beyond guilt trips and cold shoulders. They were trying to take everything. My brain locked for a second. I didn't cry. I called Rowena. She answered immediately. I was waiting for you to call, she said. She'd been quietly collecting screenshots, emails, Alicia's edits on the house plans, voice memos, everything. I listened while winter wind rattled the windows behind me. Someone believed me. Not enough people ever had. Later that week I was summoned to HR at work. Anonymous report filed. Seen screaming in public, exhibiting paranoia, showing up under the influence. They wanted an explanation. I told the truth, yes, something's wrong, except it isn't me. I laid out the documentation, the post, the threats, the letter. The HR rep nodded, didn't commit to anything, but I knew the game had changed. It wasn't just a family battle. It was about who controlled my story. My home. My reputation. Back in my living room that night, I opened my old journals. Page after page of excuses I made for them. It's just their way, I shouldn't rock the boat, family comes first. I threw each line out in my head. Then I wrote a letter. Not one I'd send. One I needed. The first line scribbled again and again, I don't owe you silence. I walked to the kitchen window, looked out at the snow beginning to fall, and said quietly into the night, this is my life. You don't own it. The wind picked up. The house groaned. But I felt something shift inside. I realized I wasn't waiting for permission anymore. I walked into the room with the weight of what had happened and the calm resolve that I was done pretending. It was supposed to be a casual family dinner, an honor for me buying the house. But I saw it immediately, the semicircle arrangement, the printed agenda someone had placed on the end table, the way Mom, Marceline, stood as though she was about to speak from a podium. As she picked up the microphone, the room went still. Celine, she began, training her gaze on me, you were never meant to own this house, we always thought you'd let it go. The words hit me like a slap I'd been expecting but denied. Guests shifted in their seats, murmurs rose like static. I thought of the voice that had haunted my childhood, you were supposed to be the strong one, not the proud one. I sat there, steady. No smile. No nod. I decided in that moment that I wouldn't play their game any longer. If I was going to respond, it would be with strategy, not reaction. Then the announcement came, by the way, we've decided the house is morally and legally to be in Alicia's name, for family unity. My heart slowed. Beverly stepped forward, polished her speech about sacrifice, about how she gave so much for the family and how this move made sense. The room watched. I remained seated. I didn't clap. I didn't cry. I watched the shock curve across some faces, friends of the family, neighbors. My internal voice whispered, they're all watching. And they think I'll stay quiet. I realized that if I didn't act right then, I would lose my home, my dignity, the very right to define myself. The air shifted. I felt power gathering inside me, cold, clear. They declared disloyalty, I declared truth. Rowena's signal came just then. Across the room she held a small USB in her hand, covered by her palm. Moments later the big screen flickered on. The audience leaned in. First my name, Celine Quinlan, lead architect and owner, Revision 01, signed October 22, 24. Then the version with Alicia's name, date changed, seal removed. Phones snapped photos. The murmurs turned into gasps. I stood and faced them, feel free to check the source date and lawyer's stamp. The room froze. My hands were still. My voice calm. Their image of me as the quiet follower shattered in seconds. The shift from humiliation to quiet and potent power happened faster than I expected. I felt the moment click, no turning back. Walking to the center of the room, I looked directly at Mom and Dad. I bought the house. I own the house. If you can't see that, you were never part of my story. The music faded. Conversations froze. I handed them a certified notice that I had filed earlier that day, proof that the deed had been locked under my name, that any claim they make will be subject to court review. I didn't wait for applause. I didn't wait for a reaction. I left. It was my exit on my terms. Outside, the streetlights of Spokane shone on fresh snowflakes that fell silently. I breathed it in. Cold, clean, unmistakable. I would live on my terms, not theirs. I walked into the room with the weight of what had happened and the calm resolve that I was done pretending. It was supposed to be a casual family dinner, an honor for me buying the house. But I saw it immediately, the semicircle arrangement, the printed agenda someone had placed on the end table, the way Mom, Marceline, stood as though she was about to speak from a podium. As she picked up the microphone, the room went still. Celine, she began, training her gaze on me, you were never meant to own this house, we always thought you'd let it go. The words hit me like a slap I'd been expecting but denied. Guests shifted in their seats, murmurs rose like static. I thought of the voice that had haunted my childhood, you were supposed to be the strong one, not the proud one. I sat there, steady. No smile. No nod. I decided in that moment that I wouldn't play their game any longer. If I was going to respond, it would be with strategy, not reaction. Then the announcement came, by the way, we've decided the house is morally and legally to be in Alicia's name, for family unity. My heart slowed. Beverly stepped forward, polished her speech about sacrifice, about how she gave so much for the family and how this move made sense. The room watched. I remained seated. I didn't clap. I didn't cry. I watched the shock curve across some faces, friends of the family, neighbors. My internal voice whispered, they're all watching. And they think I'll stay quiet. I realized that if I didn't act right then, I would lose my home, my dignity, the very right to define myself. The air shifted. I felt power gathering inside me, cold, clear. They declared disloyalty, I declared truth. Rowena's signal came just then. Across the room she held a small USB in her hand, covered by her palm. Moments later the big screen flickered on. The audience leaned in. First my name, Celine Quinlan, lead architect and owner, Revision 01, signed October 22, 24. Then the version with Alicia's name, date changed, seal removed. Phones snapped photos. The murmurs turned into gasps. I stood and faced them, feel free to check the source date and lawyer's stamp. The room froze. My hands were still. My voice calm. Their image of me as the quiet follower shattered in seconds. The shift from humiliation to quiet and potent power happened faster than I expected. I felt the moment click, no turning back. Walking to the center of the room, I looked directly at Mom and Dad. I bought the house. I own the house. If you can't see that, you were never part of my story. The music faded. Conversations froze. I handed them a certified notice that I had filed earlier that day, proof that the deed had been locked under my name, that any claim they make will be subject to court review. I didn't wait for applause. I didn't wait for a reaction. I left. It was my exit on my terms. Outside, the streetlights of Spokane shone on fresh snowflakes that fell silently. I breathed it in. Cold, clean, unmistakable. I would live on my terms, not theirs. When I met Truman and Rowena that morning, the sky over Spokane hung heavy, like the day hadn't decided whether to rain or clear. Truman's office smelled faintly of coffee and dry paper, a place where endings got signed into beginnings. I sat across from him while Rowena spread out the documents. My name stood cleanly on each page. No one else's. Truman spoke gently. Once we finish this, they'll have no legal access, no claim to your equity, no grounds to touch your assets. I nodded, breathing in the stillness that came before every hard decision. Rowena pointed to one more page. This clause makes it official. If they ever try to file a financial claim, the court has to approve it first. I pressed my pen against the paper. My hand didn't tremble. The ink moved smooth and final. When it was done, Truman leaned back, a quiet satisfaction in his tone. You're not being unkind, Celine. You're doing what they never had the courage to do, draw a line. I smiled faintly, not in triumph, but relief. Back in my car, I typed one final email. This is no longer a discussion. It's done. Then I blocked every number tied to my family. Not out of rage, not even bitterness. It was self-preservation. As the phone screen went blank, I whispered, finally. A few days passed before peace cracked open again. I came home from work to find a letter in my mailbox, fancy envelope, local real estate logo in the corner. Inside, a printed statement, per your request, your property is listed for preliminary sale review. My chest went cold. I hadn't requested anything. The attached note described the owner who made the call, female, mid-30s, brunette, polite, articulate. I didn't need to guess who. Alicia. My sister. I sat down on the front steps, gripping the paper so tight it crumpled. This wasn't just manipulation, it was theft. Truman picked up on the first ring. Bring the letter in, he said. Now. Within an hour, I was in his office again, police forms spread across the table. He adjusted his glasses. This is identity theft, Celine. Not family conflict anymore. My pulse slowed, anger sharpening into focus. She tried to sell my home, I said quietly. Under my name. Truman nodded. Then we lock it down. We filed the report, froze the title, and attached every piece of proof, screenshots, old threats, signed blueprints. The officer listening to us didn't even flinch when I said, my sister did it. He just nodded, professional, like he'd seen families destroy themselves before. As I walked out of the precinct, the air felt thinner. For the first time, their attacks weren't private anymore. They'd crossed into the public record, and that meant the truth had witnesses now. By the weekend, word had made its way through town. Spokane isn't big, and people talk. Neighbors who once stopped to wave at my parents began to turn away. My mother's church group canceled their brunch without explanation. It wasn't vengeance, it was exposure. A few old friends reached out quietly. We didn't know. I'm sorry. I didn't respond right away. I just read their words and felt something loosen in my chest. At work, my boss called me into her office. I expected another fallout, maybe gossip. Instead, she said, Celine, we've seen what's been happening. Don't worry about your position here. We stand with you. The steadiness in her voice caught me off guard. It was the first time in months I felt safe inside four walls that weren't my own. That night, Rowena stopped by with takeout. We sat on my porch steps, paper cups of tea warming our hands. She looked out over the quiet street and said, sometimes the loudest justice isn't about noise, it's about watching people choose who they believe. I thought about that long after she left. Loyalty shifts quietly, but it changes everything. A few days later, I took control of my story. I didn't call them. I didn't confront anyone. I just wrote a statement and posted it publicly. The home I purchased and designed belongs solely to me. Legal documents confirm this. I won't discuss it further. No accusations. No venom. Just clarity. Within hours, it spread, shared hundreds of times. People I hadn't heard from in years commented with words of support. Even strangers. When the notifications finally slowed, I shut my laptop and looked around the living room. The quiet had weight, but not the kind that crushed me. It was my silence this time, chosen, not imposed. I poured a glass of red wine and sat on the floor, leaning against the bare wall. The air smelled faintly of paint and freedom. I raised the glass toward the ceiling and whispered, to no longer being the scapegoat. The words didn't feel dramatic, they felt earned. I didn't win. I just stopped losing. And for the first time, that felt like living. I sat in the backyard, letting the cool wind brush across my face while dry leaves danced along the edge of the fence. The quiet wasn't unsettling this time. No shouting, no passive-aggressive slams of car doors, no anxious glances toward the driveway waiting for someone to show up uninvited. Just the breeze, and the occasional chirp from a bird I couldn't see. For so long, I thought silence was punishment. A vacuum where guilt settled in, where I questioned if I'd done enough, said enough, tried hard enough. But this stillness, it didn't accuse me. It embraced me. It hit me, I wasn't afraid of silence. I was afraid of the kind that came after being silenced. This wasn't that. This was mine. You know you're healing when peace feels more familiar than tension, I whispered, unsure if I believed it yet, but hoping one day I would. A few days later, a letter arrived. No return address, but I knew that script. The sharp, slanted cursive that always left grooves in the paper, like she was pressing her will into it. My mother. I stood at the kitchen counter, unmoving, reading every line 3 times over. I still think you're wrong, but I'm too tired to fight you anymore, she wrote. No apology. No reach for reconciliation. But no venom either. Not this time. If you ever want to talk, the door is unlocked. I didn't cry. I didn't clench my fists. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt done. There was no closure in that letter, only confirmation. Confirmation that what I'd been holding on to for so long wasn't hope. It was illusion. I folded the page gently and placed it in the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, the one I'd labeled past. I didn't need to burn it. Just needed to stop rereading it in my head. Later that week, I went to see Rowena. No drama this time. No updates. No defense strategies. We sat outside on her porch with 2 glasses of red and talked about everything except the past. We laughed about a trip she took to New Mexico where she accidentally joined a retirement dance class. Talked about books neither of us had finished. Shared a ridiculous memory from college involving tequila and a goat. For once, not every word out of my mouth felt like I was bracing for rebuttal. I texted Truman to update him on the investigation. Nothing new, no more letters, no shady real estate agents. Peace is boring, he said. That's how you know it's safe. I smiled reading that. He was right. A line from Maya Angelou floated back to me, one I used to see on a bookmark, now etched in me. I can be changed by what happens to me. But I refuse to be reduced by it. That was it. That was what I wanted. I repainted the guest room a dusty shade of blue, not because anyone was coming over, not for resale, just because I wanted to. I took a weekend off and drove upstate, no itinerary, no check-ins. For the first time in years, no one knew where I was, and that felt good. I started volunteering twice a week at the women's shelter. Folding clothes, scrubbing counters, listening without offering advice. I found comfort in doing something that didn't center me. Healing, in its quietest form. One morning, I met a neighbor at a coffee shop downtown. She was new to the area. We chatted about local bakeries, dogs we didn't own, and the struggle of keeping houseplants alive. No trauma. No explaining my past. Just life, unfolding, without asking permission. That night, I sat on the couch, wine in hand, lights dimmed low. I looked around the living room, noticing the space instead of fearing who might walk into it. This was my home. Not just legally, but spiritually. It wasn't about the deed anymore. It was about belonging to myself. I whispered, I made this. Not out of spite, but from survival. And for once, the story didn't need a dramatic ending, it needed a quiet beginning.